Hi, this is PA Camping Dad, Doogie. Some people ask me about how I make my cozies. There's several videos up on YouTube already about making a cozy for a simple object like a straight-walled mug like this, but I haven't seen one that shows how to make a tapered cozy, like to fit this Ziploc container that I use now. You just got very lucky that this fits perfectly inside. When you take it out, your inner comes out and you have to kind of work the cozy out. But so I'll show you the basic steps that I use to make one of these. I'm going to zoom you in and won't see my face anymore. So to begin with, I started with just a piece of paper and try to wrap it around your object that you want to do. Now I see here that I'm not going to make it in just going around this with single piece of paper. If you happen to have paper that will fit, great. But you want to get yourself down to a workable size. So I took a piece of paper and I cut it in half and taped it together on both the front and the back so that it isn't going to come apart on me. I actually didn't make it quite straight because I know we're going to end up with an arced pattern, and I did a little bit of trimming already to this piece of paper here. Put it on the side without printing on it. So what I do is you take it and you try to fit it to your container, and you want to make sure that it's contacting the whole side. And as I do this now and force it down, and I've trimmed it so I don't have a whole lot of extra length. Now try to get it so it's contacting the whole side and the whole lip up in the top here. Hopefully you can see that. I'll have to check later. And when I get it fairly close, which it is now, I don't know if you can see, I'm not quite, this is preventing me from getting a good seal here, so I'm just going to try to force it in there, maybe take my pair of scissors and force it down there and give it a little crease. And now I'll come back and I'll trim that crease that I just made off. There's that little crease that I just made. And basically you just want to get it so that and it should end up as some sort of basic arc. So we'll try that again now. You want to seat it, work at it, get it so that it's fitting as tightly as possible. So I have a little bit of a gap in some areas. Like I see I have a little gap in here. And see if I can get some extra light in here. Maybe that'll help. So I have a tiny gap there, and it's just how I didn't have my arc. And again, I need this other piece trimmed even a little bit more than I had before. And I think this gap here is caused by this arc not being perfectly smooth. One thing is, if you know that it's not perfect and you can see how this should be continued, that's my gap there, we can just correct that in the when I transfer it on to the next step. So I think I've got that good enough now. So what I'll do is I'll put it back on. On my object, work it down so that it's snug all around. And this just takes a little fiddling to get it in there. And once you have it to how you like it, you have a couple options here, and sometimes I will do both. One is to draw, if your pen works. You can draw some lines going across the transition of your two pieces, so you can then put it back together. And for now too, I'm gonna go ahead and put a piece of tape here so to keep it in this form, to keep it exactly where I want it. So now we have a nice snug fit, and you see we have a little bit of a cone shape because it's a slight cone. Now looking at it, I got a little slop is not too bad because we will be transferring this to Reflectix. You need to be aware that when you do put this to another item like Reflectix, the Reflectix has thickness to it, and so you're going to need to extend. This is fine, this pattern is fine for the inside diameter of the Reflectix, but Reflectix doesn't stretch, so you're not going to be able to pull it tight and make the outer radius match the inner radius, because there is some thickness. There's a difference. So when you're done making this pattern, you want to extend it by probably about a ½ inch at least. You know, you can't add more to it later, but you can always trim off. So I would probably add, you know, we'll see when I do it. I'll probably add at least a ½ inch, maybe an inch. So now all you need to do is keeping it firmly seated all the way up on your piece, is come in and cut. And again, you can work your way down to it. I'm just making a close approximation the first time. And you can go ahead and leave yourself the thickness of the Reflectix left, because you're going to put a bottom on this. And you have some fudge factor. If you cut it even with it, you could make the bottom go around the Reflectix. Or if you leave it the edge proud a little bit, then the bottom sits inside the Reflectix. I don't think it really matters one way or the other. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this even, flush with the bottom of my piece. Again, at any, you can always, when you make your final pass, you can always trim more off, but if you make it too small, you're going to be making another one. So once you're done with that, slip it off, and you can either, probably the best thing to do is to leave it taped, because I did draw the lines. You see when I put it back on the second time, I got it a little tighter on the bottom, so the lines don't match up anymore. So I think it's best if you take an area that is not the overlap. So there's my overlap. Let's not work with that. Let's go to an area where it's just one layer of thickness and cut it. So now we have our pattern. Now we can have access to the inside of that piece that we made on the unit. Let's tape that down so it doesn't come off. So here's our pattern that we're going to use to cut out our Reflectix. So if you want, you can also go through an intermediate step of making a template that's similar thickness to the Reflectix. This is a padded envelope that I received in the mail the other day, and so lay my template on it, and you see I extended it by about an inch, just kind of followed the arc and extended it down, and I'll cut that out now. Alright, so here's my fatter template. and we'll do a test fit on it and see how we did here. And as expected, we have a little tiny bit of overlap, but boy, I added that inch, and that was just barely enough. So and I don't think this is as thick as my Reflectix either. Got the full roll here. I haven't cut it out yet. So it's very similar, but I think the Reflectix is a little fatter. So I'm going to make sure that even after I made this template, I'm going to extend it further. So I will keep this as my template, and I'll mark it. I always forget how you spell Ziploc. So that's to fit the 2-cup Ziploc container. So now I'll keep this template if I ever have to make these again. I've made 2 or 3 already. I'm probably going to make one for my son, and I may make another for raffle giveaways at Hammock Forum events. So now that we have our template, we can just transfer it onto our piece of Reflectix. Too many projects spread out. So we'll go ahead and butt it up to the one side. So you just want to make sure you hold the template still and trace it down. And since we are dealing with a thicker piece here, and I'm not going to be able to do anything with this scrap here anyway, I might as well extend it so that we don't end up with a piece that doesn't wrap all the way around. So you just see how, hopefully you see how I just extended that line. There's so much glare off the Reflectix, it's hard to see. And we'll cut that out. Alright, so I've trimmed out my piece and I extended it again because of the thickness. I mean, I think you can probably see that, you know, it's still thicker than my padded envelope thickness. So I extended it again, more than I need. And now we'll fit it to our container. Match it on the side. I like to get it under the little lip that's on these Ziplocs so that it makes a nice clean match. And you see that I've extended it more than I needed to. So we'll go ahead and hold it firmly, ram it down into the top as best we can, and now mark where we're going to trim. We'll trim the outer piece. So I'm not sure if you can see this. We'll trim it right there. Make a mark, and then on this side we just need to kind of see where we're at. And again, you can, we're all the way back to here is where the overlap is. I can mark it on the outside, and we'll go ahead and transfer that mark. I have a feeling you're not going to be able to see this at all, but my mark was here, so I just kind of work it. probably just eyeball it, but we'll just go ahead and cut it straight there. Now again, you know, I'm gonna move it over a little bit so that I can always trim a little bit more off, but I really don't want a gap. The other thing that I've done here is sometimes I'll taper the cut on one end so that it matches better when it's curled. But of course this will be covered with a piece of duct tape, so you really won't need that. You see, I was erred on the side of caution. It looks like I need to trim another almost a 1/4 inch, not quite, off of it. So we'll go ahead and just eyeball this. So again, I'll try to angle my scissors. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but I'll angle my scissors to so I'll cut the inside a little bit more than the outside, and just barely take any off the top surface. It ends in a little bit of an angle cut there. And we try again. And I think that's the trick to making one that's really fits well, is to sneak in on it. You know, don't try to make the one cut and get yourself all the way there. And make sure each time that you're seating it up in your lip all the way. See, sometimes they get a spot where it doesn't. And the Reflectix is pretty, you know, obviously it's soft, and you can ram it up there. So I'll do a little bit more. I'm going to angle the other. I trimmed this end last time. I think what I'll do is just trim this end and angle it, and we'll try that. You see, I hardly trimmed any off those 2 times. Of course you have to put it on the right way. And then what I'm aiming for is a nice butt connection here that comes together but doesn't have a wrinkle in it. I think I'm pretty close now. I notice that the bottom is a little bit more than the top. Alright, I think we're good. It's a nice connection there now. So I will get my duct tape, and you can also use the foil tape. I had duct tape and didn't really have any reason to buy a big roll of the foil tape, so duct tape's been working fine for me. You do want to make sure you have a good brand of it, because that makes a huge difference. And we will tape up the top lip and down the side, and we'll get ourselves a bottom piece, and then we'll do the final trimming. I think it looks like we're going to be able to drop it inside it, put the lid inside it, and we'll do that and then trim this even with that piece. I'll be back in a bit. Alright, I got my roll of duct tape. We'll go ahead and put this back on. And of course this is going to be our final assembly of the actual body of the cozy. So you want to make sure you got it all how you want it. Then here, what I'll do is I'll take my piece of duct tape, which is a little less than double of the piece, and I'll put it down here. I'm not going to worry about going all the way to the bottom because that'll be covered by our when we tape the bottom on. Now since I have these two pieces locked in, I can take this out before it sticks too much. Try to keep your roll the same and go over this top lip and down the inside. And that'll help keep it nice. And I always, when I put it on each time, I make sure it tucks into the lip. I actually will have to trim the lip off of this a little bit to make it fit inside a 12 centimeter Musa mug. So now we have that piece, and we need to cut our circle for the bottom. And the easiest way to draw that onto your Reflectix is to find some other object that is the right diameter. So gathered a few items. I had a coaster, and that looks like that would be a little too big. That might be okay if I was going to put it on the outside and have the bottom clear across, but I'm going to have the bottom inset in here. So that was the first thing I had. I had a roll of electrical tape, and that's got a little more slop than I wanted. Although you can use a smaller item and just cut proud to your line. But then I looked around a little bit more and I found this, which I haven't even tested yet, but it looked like it was going to be just about the perfect size. And yeah, I was able to fit that in there, so that I'm going to use this piece as my template to cut out a piece of Reflectix. And you can try glassware, just whatever you have, little plates, depending upon what size the object is that you're trying to cover. Circles, it's easiest to find an actual circle. And while you're at it, you'll probably want to do something you're going to also want to cut a circle that sits inside this. And look at that, that's an absolutely perfect fit there. So I would go ahead and cut 2 circles out. Mark 2 circles and cut 2 out for this, using this template. Okay, so here we are. I cut my circle out and just stuffed it down in there. And you can see I'm a little proud on the edge there. And we'll go ahead and trim that down. Just eyeball it, run right around and trim it off even. Alright, now we're ready for big trick that I came up with that really eases this next step. Basically, lots of people have shown this before, but you want to cut a bunch of little strips of duct tape or whatever tape you're using. Probably, you use your full width of the tape, and then you make approximately 3/4 inch strips. Can be up to 1 inch. If you get too much fatter than that, then they start to wrinkle on you. And you want a whole bunch of these strips to go all the way around. And it's a real pain to cut those strips out using scissors because they stick to the tape, and then you have to line them all up on the edge of a table or something so they're ready for you to put down. And I happen to have a scrap of shelving, wire shelving from a pantry or linen closet, I think this was. Hopefully this is in frame. So the trick that I've come up with is to use a piece of wire shelving that I happen to have a scrap, but you could do it in your closet if you wanted. And get yourself a piece of tape off and stick it to your shelving. I like to use a nice sharp knife for this. And you can gently stick it down. Let's see if I have enough clearance here at the table. And slice through every gap. Didn't stick that one down well enough. We won't use that one. Normally I don't do this on a table. I give myself a little more room underneath. So as you see now, I have a nice group of tape. I'll use that for something else. Another project I need a little tiny scrap for. And now you have all your pieces of tape ready to go. And you just peel them off, and I like to start on opposites. I tend to like to start on the side of the container and pull it to the bottom, but you can really do it any way you want. I'll do this joint between the ends of the piece so that you see how I didn't need to bring this up. We're going to cover it completely. And just work your way around. I normally start by doing the 4 opposite sides, and it depends. I'll just fill in now and work my way around so you have every bit of the bottom covered. And just smooth them down, and you see how having the tape pieces available just really speeds things up, and they're easy to grab. No problems at all. You work your way all the way around. Also makes your pieces very consistently sized. You really have to kind of work if you want to make a smaller one or a fatter one, but you can. And go back to that one little gap there. And that is a tapered cozy to fit an object. And then the top, it's just a matter of, normally I just take my circle cutout, and I haven't sized this. Looks like I need to trim that down a little bit more to make it fit inside this piece. Normally I just take a piece of tape and roll it over and make a double stick piece and stick it on it. And of course I found in the past that a hammock forum sticker fits perfectly to close it all off, and I have the piece of Reflectix under here, and it keeps it clean, keeps you from getting any crud down in there. Just was again a lucky happenstance that fit perfectly. I'm not going to bother trimming this down in front of you, but that's how you make a tapered cozy. Get out there and have fun.